Rachel Turner was the dependable wife, the devoted mother, the sister everyone admired. Lisa Turner was the wild spirit, the beautiful outsider, the one who always wanted more. When Lisa moved into Rachel's home after a breakup, it seemed like a temporary favor between sisters. But beneath the surface, jealousy turned to obsession, and desire twisted into betrayal. What started as an affair with Rachel's husband would spiral into a deadly confrontation, one that ended with a grave in the backyard and a family destroyed from within. In a quiet neighborhood just outside Minneapolis, the Turner family lived in what most would call the perfect home. 2 stories of modest charm, trimmed hedges, and wind chimes that jingled softly in the breeze. Rachel Turner had built a life most people envied. She was a registered nurse at the local hospital, respected for her calm demeanor and tireless work ethic. Her husband, Eric, was a successful real estate agent who charmed clients effortlessly with his easy smile and confident stride. Together they raised their 6-year-old son, Aiden, in the kind of suburban stillness that promised stability. But beneath that surface, things were shifting, though no one would realize it until it was far too late. The change began subtly, almost imperceptibly, when Rachel's younger sister, Lisa, moved in. At 26, Lisa was outgoing, vivacious, and unpredictable, the kind of person who made every room feel brighter or heavier, depending on her mood. She had just come out of a painful breakup and had nowhere else to go. Rachel, always the dependable older sister, offered her a place to stay without hesitation. What was meant to be a temporary solution slowly turned permanent, and Lisa settled into the guest bedroom upstairs. At first, it seemed like a good arrangement. Lisa helped out around the house, often picking Aiden up from school and preparing dinner before Rachel got home from her long shifts. She brought energy into the home that had started to feel routine. Eric appeared to appreciate her presence as well, and the 3 adults developed a rhythm. But as the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere began to shift in ways Rachel couldn't quite put her finger on. Lisa and Eric started spending more time together. At first, it was innocent. Conversations in the kitchen over morning coffee, light-hearted teasing during family dinners, the occasional shared laugh while watching late-night television. Rachel dismissed her discomfort as paranoia, chalking it up to her own exhaustion. After all, Lisa was her sister. Eric was her husband. She trusted them both. But Lisa had always had a certain magnetic pull, a way of drawing attention without even trying. She knew how to dress, how to speak, and how to subtly place herself at the center of someone's focus. And slowly, that focus began to shift from Rachel to Eric. She started wearing tighter clothes around the house, lounging in the living room in short shorts and tank tops, always careful to be present when Rachel was away or occupied. Eric noticed, of course, but he said nothing. At first, he told himself it was harmless. Then he told himself he didn't care. Eventually, he stopped telling himself anything at all. Rachel continued to live in denial, ignoring the unease growing inside her. She'd come home to find Lisa and Eric laughing about something they wouldn't explain. She'd walk into a room only for the conversation to abruptly stop. Still, she said nothing. She didn't want to be the jealous wife or the overbearing sister. So, she kept smiling, kept cooking dinners, kept folding laundry as if everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. Eric began pulling away from Rachel subtly at first. He spent more time on his phone, claimed he was busy with work, and no longer reached for her at night. When Rachel asked what was wrong, he simply said he was tired. She believed him, or at least pretended to. And Lisa, ever the opportunist, was there to fill the growing space between them. Her kindness was carefully timed, her presence always convenient. What looked like support from the outside was, in truth, the slow unraveling of a marriage from within its own walls. No one else noticed. Neighbors still waved as the family walked to the park. Friends still commented on how close the sisters seemed. Social media still showed smiling faces, happy captions, filtered perfection. But the truth was quietly blooming in the shadows of that house, fed by secrecy and desire. The Turner home, once a sanctuary of trust and routine, had become something else entirely. And while Rachel clung to the illusion of control, Lisa was playing a much different game. One that had no rules and only one goal. She wanted what her sister had, and she wasn't going to leave until she got it. Lisa's presence in the Turner household grew heavier by the day, like a scent that clung to everything and couldn't be washed out. What began as a temporary stay had evolved into something far more complicated. She no longer seemed like a guest, she acted like she belonged. And in her mind she did. Her routine started to mirror Rachel's, waking early to make breakfast, helping Aiden get ready for school, even tidying up the house before Eric returned from work. She carved out space in their lives, so subtly it was almost as if she'd always been part of the household. Her obsession with Eric had moved past infatuation and into fixation. Every glance he gave her, every word spoken in kindness, she clung to like proof that her feelings were mutual. She began keeping track of when he left the house, what time he came back, and what kind of mood he was in. She learned the sound of his footsteps on the stairs, and could tell when he was heading toward the kitchen versus his home office. She memorized the rhythm of his voice and the curve of his laugh. To Lisa, these weren't just observations, they were signs. Clues that she was getting closer to what she believed was meant to be. Eric, for his part, was caught in a dangerous middle ground. He wasn't blind to Lisa's intentions, nor was he immune to the attention. Lisa made him feel seen, in a way that Rachel hadn't in a long time. It wasn't that he didn't love his wife. He did. But the monotony of marriage, the strain of parenting, and the long hours of Rachel's job had created a silent gap between them. Lisa slipped into that gap with ease, offering laughter, compliments, and the thrill of something forbidden. He didn't seek it out, not consciously. But he didn't stop it either. The shift became undeniable the night Rachel had to work a double shift due to an emergency at the hospital. Eric came home late, exhausted and mentally drained. Lisa was waiting with dinner already prepared, candles lit on the table, and soft music playing through the speakers. She told him she wanted to thank him for everything, for letting her stay, for being kind. He sat down hesitantly, aware of the undercurrent in the air but too tired to confront it. One glass of wine became two. The conversation flowed easily. Lisa leaned in a little closer. The room felt warmer. That night blurred the lines completely. What had been tension became action. Regret followed quickly for Eric, but for Lisa it was validation. She believed that night confirmed everything she had hoped for. She saw it not as a mistake but as a beginning. From that moment on, her perception of her role in the household changed. She wasn't just Rachel's sister anymore. In her mind, she was Eric's future. But Eric pulled away. He avoided being alone with Lisa and limited their conversations to practical matters. The guilt pressed on him daily. He couldn't look Rachel in the eyes. He couldn't sleep properly. His home, once a place of comfort, now felt like a trap he had built for himself. He thought about confessing but couldn't bring himself to do it. He told himself he would fix it, that it would pass, that Lisa would eventually move out. But Lisa had no intention of leaving. She became more possessive, more erratic. She accused Eric of using her, claimed he was lying to himself. When he refused to entertain her claims, she began threatening to tell Rachel. She said if he didn't choose her, she'd blow everything up. Eric, unsure of what she might do, began recording some of their interactions with his phone. He needed to protect himself, even if it was already too late. Rachel, caught in the middle of a storm she couldn't see, continued on as if everything was normal. She still kissed Eric goodbye in the morning and called Lisa to check on Aiden during her lunch break. But there were cracks starting to form. Clothes she didn't remember washing smelled like Lisa's perfume. A wineglass left in the sink that she never used. A shift in Eric's touch, in his silence. She began to question her own instincts. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what it was yet. Lisa, meanwhile, was unraveling. The fantasy she had built in her mind was no longer enough. She wanted Eric, fully and completely, and she would do anything to get him. What had started as an emotional game was twisting into something darker. Her resentment toward Rachel deepened. In her eyes, Rachel had always had everything handed to her. Success, a child, a husband. Lisa had nothing except desire, and that desire was turning dangerous. Eric's guilt hung over him like a shadow he couldn't escape. Every moment in the house became a performance, a delicate balancing act between hiding the truth and maintaining control over a situation that was spiraling far beyond what he ever anticipated. He couldn't speak openly to Rachel, and he no longer felt safe alone with Lisa. The woman who had once been his sister-in-law had transformed into something unpredictable, her emotions swinging wildly between affection and fury. He no longer trusted her, and worse, he didn't trust himself either. Lisa's behavior had shifted. Her obsession with Eric was no longer masked in flirtation or subtle suggestions. Now it was bold, erratic, and unsettling. She left notes in his car, sent texts in the middle of the night from just downstairs, and began accusing him of leading her on. He tried to reason with her, to explain that what had happened was a mistake, that he was trying to fix things. But Lisa wasn't interested in apologies. In her mind, she had given everything, and he had taken it willingly. She refused to be cast aside like a mistake. The tension in the house became unbearable. Rachel remained unaware of the details, but couldn't ignore the shift in energy. She asked questions Eric dodged, noticed Lisa's mood swings and long stares, and felt the emotional distance growing like a wall between her and her husband. One evening, as Eric sat alone in his office, the thought occurred to him. He needed proof. Not to expose Lisa publicly, not yet, but to protect himself in case things escalated further. He purchased a small camera online and installed it in the living room, tucked between books on a shelf. If Lisa was going to threaten him, he needed more than his word to back up what was happening. It didn't take long for the camera to capture something strange. On a Thursday afternoon when Eric was at work and Rachel was at the hospital, Lisa was home alone. The footage showed her pacing the living room, muttering under her breath, her hands shaking as she pulled open drawers and inspected their contents. She held a kitchen knife for several seconds, stared at it, then set it down and walked away. Her expression was unreadable, neither angry nor calm, but something in between, focused intent. Watching the footage later that night, Eric felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Something was deeply wrong. He debated telling Rachel right then. But how could he explain the hidden camera without unraveling everything else? He wasn't ready. He needed time to think, to prepare. Instead, he showed the footage to a friend. Someone outside the situation, someone neutral. The friend was blunt: go to the police, confess everything, or at the very least, tell your wife. Eric nodded but left the conversation without making any decisions. His life was already fractured, and he couldn't imagine shattering it entirely. Then came the breaking point. Rachel came home early one evening, earlier than expected. Lisa hadn't heard her come in. Eric was in the backyard with Aiden, and Rachel walked through the front door to find Lisa sitting alone at the kitchen table, talking quietly to herself. Rachel paused in the hallway listening. Lisa's words were fragmented, mentions of lies, betrayal, being chosen, and justice. It was enough to make Rachel freeze. When Lisa saw her, she snapped out of it instantly. Smiling too brightly, acting like nothing was wrong. Rachel forced a smile in return, but the unease followed her through the rest of the evening. That night, after putting Aiden to bed, Rachel searched through Lisa's room while she was in the shower. Hidden under a pile of clothes in her closet was a small journal. Rachel opened it, expecting a collection of poems or daily thoughts. What she found instead were pages filled with fantasies, delusions, and plans. Lisa's handwriting describing a life with Eric, a future without Rachel. There were even notes about how Rachel didn't deserve him, how she was the obstacle, the problem. Rachel didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed next to Eric, unable to say a word. Her heart pounded with disbelief, betrayal, and a growing fear she couldn't push away. In the morning, she didn't mention the journal. She went to work as usual. But something inside her had changed. Eric, unaware of what Rachel had discovered, finally decided to act. He planned to confront Lisa that weekend, show her the footage, demand that she leave the house. But he would never get the chance. Because within 24 hours, Lisa would vanish. No warning, no note, no trace. Her bedroom left in disarray, her phone on the nightstand, and her car still in the driveway. The house, once heavy with tension, suddenly became silent, but the silence was far from peaceful. It was the beginning of something far darker. Lisa Turner disappeared without a sound. One moment she was in the house, the next she was simply gone. Her bedroom door was left ajar, the bed unmade, her shoes still lined up neatly by the closet. Her phone sat on the nightstand with the screen cracked in one corner, untouched since the night before. Her purse was hanging on the doorknob, as if she intended to grab it on the way out but never did. Even her toothbrush was still damp, suggesting she had used it recently. Yet there was no sign of her anywhere. Eric was the first to notice. He knocked on her door late in the morning, after realizing he hadn't seen or heard her since the night before. When she didn't respond, he pushed the door open and found the room in a state of eerie stillness. At first, he assumed she had gone for a walk or a drive to cool off. But hours passed, and there was no return. No call, no message. As night fell and Lisa's absence stretched into the next day, concern turned to panic. Rachel's reaction was more measured. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. She told Eric to give it time, that Lisa had always been impulsive. But something in her voice sounded rehearsed, like a line she had practiced over and over. Eric didn't press her. He was too busy pacing the floors, calling mutual friends, and driving around the neighborhood in case Lisa had wandered off in distress. 2 days later, Rachel called the police and filed a missing persons report. The officers who responded asked the usual questions: when Lisa was last seen, what she was wearing, whether there had been arguments or any signs of emotional instability. Eric told them about the confrontation they had, how Lisa had grown obsessive and unpredictable. He handed over the camera footage showing her with the kitchen knife. The officers took notes but said it wasn't enough to suspect foul play. Adults had the right to disappear, they reminded him, unless evidence proved otherwise. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors came by with casseroles and concerned looks. Whispers filled the air, rumors of family drama, secrets behind closed doors. Rachel returned to work 2 days later as if nothing had happened. She smiled at coworkers, took patient vitals, and never once mentioned her sister. Eric noticed the detachment, the strange calm that seemed to settle over her. It unnerved him, but he couldn't focus on her behavior. His mind was consumed by questions. Had Lisa harmed herself? Had she run away? Or had something worse happened? A week later, those questions began to find answers. A maintenance worker at a nearby park discovered a trash bag partially buried behind a storage shed near the tree line. Inside were personal belongings. Lisa's wallet, some of her clothes, a broken bracelet Rachel had given her as a birthday gift. Most alarming of all were the blood stains on the fabric. The bag was turned over to police, and forensic analysis confirmed that the blood matched Lisa's. The case was now officially treated as suspicious. Police returned to the Turner home with a warrant, combing through rooms, checking the backyard, and searching Lisa's vehicle. Eric cooperated fully, handing over his phone, his laptop, even his fingerprints. But despite his transparency, the police viewed him with growing suspicion. He had motive, opportunity, and a complicated history with the missing woman. Rachel, on the other hand, barely registered as a concern. She appeared to be the one left behind, the wife betrayed and blindsided. No one asked why she didn't seem more emotional. No one questioned the stillness in her eyes. Then came the discovery that changed everything. During the third search of the property, officers noticed a patch of disturbed soil near the back fence, where new grass had been recently laid. Underneath was a shallow grave, clumsily covered with stones and layers of mulch. When they began digging, the smell confirmed their fears. Wrapped in a tarp, her face bruised and her hands tied, was the body of Lisa Turner. The crime scene investigators worked in silence, documenting every inch of the space. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as asphyxiation, with blunt force trauma to the head. The body had been buried for several days. Questions now turned to Eric. He had motive, he had access, and he had waited 2 days before calling the police. It all pointed to him, at first. But as detectives pieced together the timeline, inconsistencies began to surface. Eric had an alibi the night Lisa disappeared. He was captured on security footage at a gas station across town, making a purchase with a timestamp that placed him away from the house during the critical hours. Phone records, GPS data, and witness statements backed up his story. The net that had been closing around him suddenly fell away. Attention shifted. Rachel had no alibi for that night, no digital footprint, no confirmed sightings. When questioned, she gave vague answers about taking a drive to clear her head. Her calm demeanor, once viewed as strength, now appeared suspicious. And then police found it. The boots in the garage, caked in mud and dried blood, tucked behind a stack of paint cans. Blood that matched Lisa's. The truth was no longer hiding. It was clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be seen. The discovery of Lisa's body sent a ripple of horror through the entire community. But the shock deepened as suspicion fell not on Eric, the man with motive and past involvement, but on Rachel, the quiet, composed sister who had seemed untouched by the chaos swirling around her. The evidence was undeniable. The boots found in the garage, hidden behind unused paint cans, were caked in soil from the burial site. Forensics confirmed the presence of Lisa's blood, along with small fragments of grass and mulch consistent with the grave behind the fence. Rachel was brought in for questioning. She didn't ask why. She didn't protest. She walked into the station with her hands folded calmly in front of her, her expression unreadable. Investigators expected panic or tears, but Rachel gave them neither. She answered questions with quiet precision. Yes, she had been home the night Lisa disappeared. No, she didn't remember the exact time she went out or returned. She said she had gone for a drive to clear her mind, to escape the tension in the house. When asked about the boots, she said she hadn't worn them in weeks. The blood. She had no explanation. The detectives weren't convinced. They knew what they had. The physical evidence told a story that Rachel was no longer able to control. She had motive, anger, betrayal, and emotional devastation. Lisa had not only seduced her husband, but she had also poisoned the peace of their home, turned it inside out. To Rachel, it wasn't just infidelity. It was destruction. When pressed harder, her answers became shorter. She eventually asked for a break, then returned to the interview room and sat silently for nearly an hour. And then, without warning, she began to speak. Rachel told them everything, or at least, what she claimed was everything. She said she had discovered the affair weeks before Lisa's disappearance. She found messages on Eric's phone, fragments of texts that left no room for doubt, but she didn't confront him immediately. She watched, waited, observed the shifts in their behavior. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was humiliation, her own sister under her roof taking what was hers, and Eric too weak to stop it. She said the rage came slowly, building in silence, growing under the surface like a pressure valve waiting to blow. On the night Lisa vanished, Rachel claimed she confronted her in the kitchen. There were no screams, no theatrics, just accusations. Lisa, according to Rachel, didn't deny it. In fact, she mocked her, said that Eric was already lost, that Rachel was just too blind to see it, that he loved her now, that he wanted a woman who saw him, who understood him. Rachel snapped. She claimed she didn't mean to kill her. She said she only shoved her. But Lisa fell, hit her head, and collapsed. She panicked. She didn't call for help. She sat on the floor for hours, staring at the body, unable to move. But the autopsy contradicted that version. Lisa's injuries weren't consistent with a single fall. She had been struck more than once, and there were signs of strangulation. This wasn't a momentary lapse. It was deliberate, cold, prolonged. Rachel had planned it, or at the very least, finished it with full awareness of what she was doing. The journal she had read, the camera footage, the months of tension. She had internalized it all until it became something she couldn't contain. The court proceedings moved swiftly,